everyone, Hezu here. Happy New Year. Welcome to Ramble Reviews, best suited for one-time watches, theater showings, or media I don't have a ton of access or time to dedicate to, but would still like to put a word in. Today's topic, Hayao Miyazaki's The Boy and the Heron.
Hey, so this is a movie that is reliant on heavy metaphors. I'm just gonna warn you now, I'm not reviewing this movie metaphorically. I'm reviewing it for the story.
Second disclaimer, I watched the dub of this, so some translations may be off.
Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen this movie, now is the time to turn back, because I'll be talking a lot about its plot. 3, 2, 1, here we go.
The first 20 minutes are absolutely amazing. Nostalgic, classic, good Ghibli. It starts off kind of dark, it lacks music, and therefore gives a fantastic feel to the beginning, where this kid is exploring this new town, this new house, this new everything. It's awkward, it's quiet, we hear every little noise like clothing rustling and floorboards creaking, and it's great. Amazing sound design. It's so great to watch a quiet movie for once, right? The scenery is gorgeous. The house design is always on point. I remember a specific point in the movie where this character opens this door and the door is like so thick and so heavy, and it's so nice. It really puts you in the scene. Despite it taking place in Japan, the house he lives in is an interesting mix of Japanese and European. The character conflicts are set up wonderfully. We get information on inner and outer conflict with very little dialogue. We get a scene where the main character, Mahito, is welcomed by his stepmother on this bike. She's dressed so pretty and she seems so kind, but they're forced to sit next to each other on this really cramped bike, implying this is a situation Mahito was sort of forced into and isn't comfortable with, like they don't know each other very well. What's more, his stepmother grabs his hand and forcefully places it on her pregnant stomach, telling him he's gonna be an older brother. He seems really uncomfortable with this, and his stepmom just keeps smiling. You can just feel the tension radiating off of them. They are very respectful to each other, but Mahito is very distant, and his stepmom is kind of overstepping her boundaries, saying she's his new mom when he's not over his birth mother's death yet. We get a scene where his stepmom brings in a suitcase full of canned food and sugar to the housemaidens, and they're all excited over such bare necessities because the war has placed them all in trying times. It also establishes Mahito's father is very rich, some kind of businessman who runs a factory to probably aid in the war. And then there's another scene where Mahito, after getting into a fight at school, when he walks home with just a few scuffs, he picks up a rock and smashes it into his head, making blood gush down his arm. It is so unexpected, so manipulative. The kid either wants the kids to get into trouble or he wants his family to let him stay home and not have to go to school. I mean, it's all kind of left up for interpretation. For Ghibli, you can't always get inside the mind of the characters on screen. You can't always tell what they're thinking or what their next action will be, and I love that. There's also another scene where the heron comes in close to Mahito and his stepmother before flying away. His stepmom remarks that is unusual behavior for the bird. Mahito goes off, wandering the property, and finds an old tower with heron feathers. He starts collecting them, trying to get into the tower. When he leaves, the feathers disappear. I don't recall if the bird speaks before or after this, but at some point Mahito approaches the heron and accuses it of not being a real heron. Like somehow he could sense there was something off about it even before we got a lot of scenes for the audience to realize that. It was a little fast, if I'm being honest. But when he approaches the heron by the pond, the bird speaks to him. Everything around him starts crawling up him or circling him and chanting for him to join them. Frogs, fish, bugs, you name it. They crawl up him like a beacon. It's so mysterious, so creepy, so cool. And then we see his stepmom come out with a bow and arrow and shoot at the bird, and he wakes up like it's a dream. It's hard to tell whether that was really a dream or if his new family is just straight up trying to gaslight him. But it had me at the edge of my seat, like I was excited for this. There is a confusing plot hole though. When Mahito first arrives and follows the heron, he's collecting the heron's feathers, but when he leaves the tower area, the feathers completely disappear from his hands. Later, he manages to actually grab and keep one of the heron feathers and makes a bow and arrow with it. Why didn't that heron feather disappear like the other ones did? It's also a little weird because the heron also calls this his lucky 7 feather or something that follows him wherever it goes. What makes that feather so lucky? Is this some kind of like reference? I don't really understand. But man, those first 20 minutes, gorgeous. But then those 20 minutes are up. And we find out his stepmom is actually his aunt, his mother's younger sister. And things go downhill and get a little weird. And it stays weird the rest of the movie. How it started. Boy struggling with war and grief PTSD now struggles to come to terms with his new stepmom, his new school, and his new home. A mysterious magical heron stalks him, beckoning him somewhere mysterious as strange things happen around him, telling him his mother is alive to lure him away. He has a bad feeling about the bird and tries to hunt and kill it. One day he sees his stepmother disappear into the woods. She doesn't come back. The heron kidnapped her, and the boy sets out to rescue her by entering a giant, ancient, mysterious tower. Great, perfect, excellent. How it ended. Boy ventures into a giant alien rock from space. It's not a real tower at all. A giant rock of which is a portal to the afterlife / before life and has no sense of timeline. There's dead people, there's not yet born people, there's alive people from different centuries who somehow also have magical powers only sometimes. Like, he came to this world with one of the old maids, and suddenly this old maid disappears and is now instead a younger, badass boat lady version of herself who takes Mahito under her wing and doesn't really explain anything to him. She just takes him fishing. And then she sells her fish to, like, the dead people? Aren't they dead? Why did they need to eat? She's like, they can't kill anything, so I kill for them. Okay, but why? This is the after... Why do they need to... They're dead. Why do they need to eat? I'm confused. Also, why can't they kill anything, but you can? At some point, Mahito realizes this lady is the maid he came to this afterlife with, and she says, I don't remember you. I've been here for as long as I can remember. But then at the end of the film, she leaves through a door to go back to her own timeline. How did she get here? Has she been here, like, ever since she was born? How did she survive? Why is she okay to just go back home? I don't know. I'm a little confused about that. She even carved dolls, older versions of the maids from the future. How does that work? And at the end of the film, she even gives him this little carving of her older self, the maid that came with him. And when he goes back to the living world, suddenly that old lady comes out of the doll that she carved? What is going on there? The timeline doesn't match up, and neither does that phenomenon. There are also non-native pelicans, parrots, and other bird people descended from real birds from the real world that were brought there against their will. They are always starving. And yet, literally every other scene we see, they have plenty of food. No idea where this food came from or why they act like they're always hungry to eat humans. Like, seriously, we get this really good scene where Mahito is watching new souls be born. They're these cute little marshmallow guys that puff up and float up to the sky. But then a bunch of pelicans come in and murder a bunch of them, just consuming a ton of them, feasting. Mahito is horrified. He is so upset over this. And then some girl comes by with fire powers and starts blasting them from the sky like pew, pew, pew. You know, killing some of the souls too, and Mahito screams at her for it. He's like, stop it, you're killing them. But she doesn't really react to him, she just kind of leaves. And then Mahito later comes across a bloodied and burnt, dying pelican on the ship. He threatens it with a weapon, asking why they kill and eat the souls. The pelican says, his people were brought from the living world. Because this is the afterlife, there is no food here. They're starving. His tribe's offspring can't even fly. They become so weak. So they eat the souls because they have no other choice. They either eat the souls or they starve. And then he dies. Mahito feels pity for the bird and respectfully digs a grave and buries it. This is a great scene. Too bad it doesn't make any sense. We literally just saw them catch a giant fish the size of a whale in the ocean. That's a predator fish, which means there must be plenty of prey to feast on for that thing to be alive. Not to mention, we see a different bird species complaining of something similar. The parrot people. I think it's mentioned at some point they're so hungry they could eat a human, and they try to. They keep threatening to eat Mahito. When later we see they have this giant advanced civilization. They're cutting vegetables and various other foods. Like, you guys are thriving and have been doing so for years. It looks like you have plenty of food. Where the hell did you get it from? How are these pelicans starving? There is definitely food in this place. Also, why are the parrots more civilized than you guys are? They're thriving. They're giant. They even have a king. And these dudes are just regular pelicans that can talk. Wasn't it implied you guys were brought here at the same time? Man, there's so many plot holes. Anyway, Mahito ventures in there to find his pregnant aunt stepmom, who for some reason wants to give birth to her child in this world. This doesn't make any sense based off how it showed souls being born. You know, the little white puffballs that turn into balloons and float into the sky. Also, this room is banned from being entered for some reason, so that probably includes those puffballs. This woman can't give birth here. What the heck is she thinking? She also ends up screaming at Mahito, saying she hates him. Like, really? He was cold but respectful to you. He is your late older sister's son, your nephew, your stepson now. What the heck is going on with the dynamics here? I am so lost. Mahito also meets his mother when she was a young teenager who for some reason has fire powers. He also meets his great-grand-uncle who discovered the alien rock and made some kind of contract with it, where he is the god of the world, and he has to stack blocks every 3 days to keep this world intact. And he's like, I sent the Heron to fetch you, my descendant, so you may carry on my work. And the boy's like, yeah, no thanks. One of the parrot descendants, their king, gets angry that their weird reality is the way that it is, and that the humans are just gonna abandon them. He tries to stack the blocks to keep their world together and fails. So he gets angry and destroys the Tower of Blocks, which destroys the tower, the alien rock, and kills the boy's granduncle. They all leave back to their own times, and Mahito tries to warn his mom that she's going to die in a horrible fire in the future, and she's like, oh, that's fine. Fire doesn't bother me. My younger sister will be your new mom now. What the fuck? Every alive person escapes that world, including all the birds, and the last scene is the boy with his aunt, stepmom, and his new brother and his dad leaving to go back to Tokyo. What on earth is this plot? What happened? Oh, you know how I didn't mention the Heron, like, at all after his initial introduction? Yeah, he's insignificant. Fun fact, this movie, The Boy and the Heron, is actually originally called How Do You Live in Japanese. It was changed to The Boy and the Heron and advertised to be about The Boy and the Heron, and it's the most insane, false, localized advertising I've seen in a while. The Heron is barely in this movie. He's this cool, mysterious, important figure at the start, but after the nonsense kicks off, he's just there. He's this weird, semi-comic relief side character sidekick that comes in every so often, or just follows Mahito around. He was basically Mahito's great-granduncle's creation to be this messenger bird to drag Mahito from the future into this giant rock so his granduncle can ask for Mahito to succeed him. The Heron was supposed to guide Mahito, and he doesn't even do that. He kind of tricks the boy into going into the afterlife to see his mother, but after that, Mahito refuses his guidance and kind of just ignores him most of the time, which is such a shame because as an American, I came into this movie excited to see this odd dynamic between said boy and the Heron. Turns out there is none. Sorry, folks. Yep, I'm disappointed too. Mahito just kind of hangs out with his younger maid and his younger mom most of the time. Even the Heron at the end of the movie is like, oh, you'll forget about me. Bye, kid. Bye, I guess? Who are you? How are you both a man and a bird? You're the only one from that world who seems to be able to do that. Like, you're kind of a Selkie here. You have, like, a heron skin, but you're a man underneath there, whereas, like, the Parrot King is a weird mix of both. And, you know, this is the afterlife. The before life, yeah? And everyone flees for their lives and the rock just vanishes? It implodes in on itself and gets destroyed. Did we just forget that's essentially the container to the afterlife? There were thousands of souls in there. What is the rock's vanishing implying? Are you destroying the cycle of life by doing that? Maybe the rock is just a portal hub to get to the afterlife. I mean, at least that's what I think it is. I mean, but with the way everyone fled as the world kind of crumbled around them, like, that implies the afterlife might not be around anymore, right? I feel like this movie tried to implement a bunch of metaphors last minute, like they were trying to shove them down your throat just out of the blue. And these metaphors didn't really make any sense to me, world building wise. Again, absolutely adored the start of the movie, but the rest of it feels disjointed and confused with itself. It feels like Alice in Wonderland meets Your Name, which, you know, both pretty good movies, but mixing time travel, isekai tropes, and alien rocks together on top of those is a recipe for disaster. I wasn't entirely sure where the start of this film was going. I thought that maybe this heron was this cool animal wizard that lives in this mysterious tower in the woods behind Mahito's new backyard, and maybe he was gonna learn something from him. Maybe his mother was a witch or a bird woman or something. I don't know. I thought it was going to be some cool, simple reveal, not whatever this was. Got out of hand really quickly. Sorry, this just in. I was informed that Robert Pattinson, yeah, Twilight Sparkle Man himself, voiced the Heron. What? I didn't even notice. He does an amazing job. I mean, the other cast members too. Great performances all around. Bravo, bravo. This is why I love seeing the dubs for these things. They just act so well. But yeah, I mean, the story, the screenplay, it just left a lot to be desired. It's like, oh yeah, you gotta move on. You gotta live your life. But I don't know. He got like magical closure anyway. They also tried to do too many things at once. I'd still highly recommend this movie, but Miyazaki has better works. Anyway, 9 out of 10 for the first 20 minutes of the film. Everything after that, 6 out of 10, maybe even a 5. Started off with a bang, ended with a what the heck did I just watch? Arigato, patrons. Arigato, watchers. 新しいビデオでお会いしましょう。みんな大好き。じゃあね。